Hello everybody, welcome to today's session. Today we will talk about ethical leadership using some of the visuals so you can hear and see the relevant parts of this topic. The objectives of this chapter are to understand ethical leadership, to examine the requirements of ethical leadership, to realize some of the benefits that you can actually get from effective leadership in your workplace when those leaders are considered to be ethical, and to understand how ethical leadership actually impacts your organization's culture, and to learn about different styles of conflict management that ethical leaders have in the organization, to understand how employees can be empowered to take on responsibilities in ethical leadership, to examine leader-follower relationships, to learn about leadership styles and how they influence ethical leadership, and finally to use the radar model to determine how ethical leaders handle misconduct or crisis situations in an organization. There are 7 habits of strong ethical leaders, which are the fact that ethical leaders have strong personal character. Ethical leaders have a passion to do what is right. Ethical leaders are proactive instead of being reactive. Ethical leaders consider all stakeholders' interests. Ethical leaders are role models for the organization's values. Ethical leaders are transparent and actively involved in decision making. And finally, ethical leaders take a holistic view of the company's ethical culture. And holistic view also can mean a long-term sustainable view of the organization. Leadership and ethical values can be seen driving people's behaviors in many workplaces. Take Whole Foods organization's core values. So some of their core values are to sell the highest quality natural and organic products available. That basically drives employees' behavior because that value is very clear. If I am working there, they don't have to do much training for me because I can see the first value and say, okay, something is not natural and not organic, therefore I don't need to sell this to my customers. Second, they say satisfy, delight, and nourish our customers. Third, support team member happiness and excellence. Fourth, create wealth through profits and through growth. Fifth, serve and support our local and global communities. Sixth, practice and advance environmental stewardship. 7, create ongoing win-win partnerships with suppliers. And finally, promote the health of our stakeholders through healthy eating education. So these are some really good core values for all employees who work at Whole Foods to be oriented and to take pride in as part of the organization. And thereby, if you're taking pride in what you do and you're highly satisfied, then chances are you'll gain this competitive advantage over your competitors in the industry. The conflict management styles presented in your textbook, again, the 2 dimensions of cooperativeness and assertiveness. So you can be either low or high in each dimension, low or high in each dimension. And you can see that when you are using a compromising style of conflict management, you're not getting what you want and the other party is not getting what they want. So you basically settle for whatever is available to you and to the other party, meaning you leave unhappy and they leave unhappy. So compromising, which is probably what happens in most practical conflict management situations, is not a good alternative. You need to reach for collaborating style of conflict management where it creates win-win relationship between you and the other party. So again, try to understand, see what is your dominant style of conflict management, and try to understand others' styles of conflict management so you can be prepared when it comes to dealing with resolving a conflict with other individuals. But the goal is to aim for a collaborating style of conflict management. If your natural style of conflict management is to compete because you are an athlete and you're conditioned to think that way, you need to make some adjustments for the workplace, because competitive styles of conflict management does not apply into the workplace. Remember, we're working through interdependent relationships with our employees, with our colleagues, with other departments, with suppliers, vendors, and even other organizations. So we need to have a collaboration style of leadership in conflict management so we can win and they can win as well. The goal is to have sustainable relationships for everybody's overall in long-term benefits. Ethical leadership communication includes all four of these: interpersonal communication, small group communication, nonverbal communication, and good listening skills. So practice all of them. Be prepared to be effective communicator regardless of which of these you encounter or use at any given time. Remember that ethical leadership communication requires transparency in reporting. Transparency develops a culture where ethics is frequently discussed and people are able to openly discuss various issues that they see as problematic for them, for a department, or for you as a leader or manager. Reporting basically means there's a two-way process. Both employee and leader feel a responsibility to report to their subordinates and to their bosses. And since groupthink is not a good thing for the workplace, you need to do whatever you can to avoid it in both small and large groups in your departments. First, you need to understand groupthink and how it can occur in your department. Second, allow open and honest discussions and encourage critiques, questioning, and criticism to avoid groupthink. Third, criticism should be welcomed and not minimized or dismissed. Fourth, create group tension by assigning a devil's advocate or having half of your team or group members on the pro side and the other half being on the con side to adequately evaluate decisions. Fifth, on important matters, bring in the appropriate subject matter experts, either internally or externally, to help your team, your group, make effective decisions and to avoid conflict in groupthink. Six, document the situation, options, recommendations, and implementation timetable, needed support, as well as the budget. Seven, have another team review your output to see what kind of conclusion that they would make for your team, and then you can assess, evaluate things from a very different perspective because they were not part of your group. So avoid groupthink as much as you can and try to diversify your teammates so everybody can think differently, see things from a different perspective in order to have effective win-win solutions for all relevant issues. Keep in mind to use the radar model for dealing with misconduct recovery. When ethical misconduct or issue arises in your department or workplace, as a leader, you should have plans in place to answer the stakeholders' concerns and to recover from this misconduct as quickly as possible, and so you can save face. You can adapt the acronym RADAR to describe an ethical leader's duty to recognize ethical issues, to avoid misconduct whenever possible, to discover ethical risk areas, to answer stakeholder concerns when an ethical issue comes to light, and finally to recover from a misconduct or disaster by improving upon weaknesses in the ethics program and being developmental, and to have that continuous improvement for your future so these mistakes do not happen again. So use the radar model to prevent misconduct and to recover from it. Now let us review this chapter by having some Socratic questions for ethical leadership chapter. Can one be an ethical leader and maximize shareholder value? Well, research shows that the most ethical companies are the most profitable organizations. Ethical companies can have lower turnover, higher engagement and loyalty from their employees, and much stronger reputation, which can be a very good intangible asset for any organization because of brand recognition and loyalty of customers. Also, a focus on performance without assessing ethical risk can lead to misconduct that lowers shareholder value. Which requirements for ethical leadership are important? Strong personal character, passion to do right at all times, being proactive, considering all stakeholders' interests for win-win solutions, being a role model for the organization's values, being transparent and actively involved in decision making, and having employees be involved and engaged as well. And also having a holistic view of the organization's climate or culture. Identify a company leader and explain what type of leader he or she is and why. There's the unethical leader, there's the apathetic leader, there's the ethical leader, and then there's the psychopathic leader. Hopefully you're not an unethical leader, hopefully you're not apathetic leader, and hopefully you're not a psychopathic leader. The only option here for you and I is to aim for being an ethical leader. What are some common leadership styles that we can practice and become aware of to exercise in our day-to-day decisions in the workplace? There's a transactional leader, transformational leader, authentic leader, affiliative leader, democratic leader. The question is, which one is the right leadership style for you to exercise in any given situation in the workplace? Well, this is a tricky question because, as literature shows, when you are in any workplace where you need to exercise your leadership influence or your influence in general, the situation, the people involved, the resources, the amount of time you have to make a decision, all of those are factors which determine which style of leadership might be appropriate. So if you're dealing with somebody for a short-term deal and one day you'll never see him or her again, you can easily use a transactional approach. In other words, he or she does something, you pay the person for that day a good amount of money that satisfies him or her, so there's no other developmental element that is involved here. So it's a transaction. And you can be forceful at times, or if the person doesn't do his or her job, you can basically stop paying the person. That is transactional. Somebody does some work for you, you pay him or her. However, at other times we need to be transformational, especially when you're dealing with the development of your employees so they can make effective decisions when you're not around. And at other times, you may have to use the authentic leadership style or affiliative leadership style or a democratic leadership style. So depending on what is appropriate, you use that type of style for a given situation based on the variables involved in that situation. What are bad apples and bad barrels? Well, bad apples are individuals with poor personal values. Bad barrels are organizations with weak ethical cultures where people can do whatever they want to do. So therefore, an organization can become a bad barrel, and it encourages people to take too much risk and be involved in misconduct. So ethical leaders try to avoid that type of an organization by creating a good organization and encouraging every individual to have obviously high standards and align their behaviors with good ethical conduct. Do you believe that the radar model can help you avoid misconduct? Well, keep in mind what the radar model actually is. It helps you to recognize challenges and issues that you might face. It helps you to be proactive and avoid certain situations. It helps you to discover possibilities of unethical conduct or misconduct in the future. It helps you to prepare some answers on a proactive basis for various possibilities. And it helps you to recover from a misconduct and to save face by telling everybody what you will do from here on to make improvements. Remember that it's not always what happens to us that has the greatest impact, but how we respond to what happens to us that tends to determine what happens to us next. So good luck being an ethical leader, managing conflicts effectively, having a good communication style, and using an effective leadership style in any workplace to create a good organizational culture where people are encouraged to positively influence each other toward ethical decisions in all cases. Good luck. As always, remember that ethical behavior is a skill. You need to police, you need to evaluate, and you need to improve your ethical muscles regularly so you can be the best ethical leader who can manage and lead and guide others effectively in any given situation. Good luck.